Okay, hello everybody, and thanks for tuning in again. This is week number 6. Week number 6 of our virtual learning experiment. It's good to have everybody back. We've got 3 really important things we'd like to accomplish in this video. The first is to go over or review very briefly the grading policy that has probably just been emailed to you. The second thing that we want to do is talk a little bit about last week's work and how it informs this week's work, kind of the direction that we're headed in toward the end of the year. And then the last thing that we're going to do is get into the calendar, and we'll talk about some of the work that you're going to be completing this week. All right, item number 1, the grading policy. You're watching this video in the future because I'm making this video on Saturday, and you're probably watching it on Monday. So I want to point that out because there are probably some changes that are currently being made to the grading policy. I know a lot of us have probably had questions, myself included, about what the grading is going to look like between now and the end of the year. So basically what the grading policy looks like at this stage, and again, there are probably some changes being made like as I'm making this video even. So what I want you to do first is just read whatever district email has been sent out to you. Your parents also probably received an email with some specifics. If you have any questions beyond information in the email, post into the group chat, or you can message me directly, and I'm happy to respond. What I do know for sure is that whatever grade you had at March 13th, which was our last day of class, that's really like a threshold. You can never go below whatever grade that was. But any work that you complete during our virtual learning experience is going to act as a grade booster. So you have the potential to earn a huge boost in your semester grade, and of course if you are already getting an A, then that boost is probably not a big grade benefit to you. But I would argue that the learning that's happening is much more important than, you know, an increase in any grade. So that's pretty much how the grading is going to work now that we're away. You can't sink below where you were when we left, but you can improve your grade based on completion of all of the work that is assigned during this time away. So the second item that we want to talk about is last week's work. Last week we took some time to look at some Disney films, and if you worked with some of those Disney films, you probably got a chance to see how a lot of those clips reinforce some kind of unusual and kind of troubling stereotypes that revolve around gender differences, you know, how a man is versus how a woman is. So we see maybe a kind of naive materialism in Ariel and the Little Mermaid. We see a real kind of naive, almost disconnected from reality quality in Snow White. But we see in so many of these films the reliance on a male savior. And even in a film like Mulan, which is supposed to be Disney's response to a lot of those stereotypical attitudes of their past catalog, we still see an ending where Mulan saves the day with her friends, but she still, you know, we still see this kind of Disney, stereotypical Disney ending where, I forget the guy's name, but he shows up at the end and the grandmother says, you know, do you want to stay for dinner or do you want to stay forever? And we still see this idea of notions of completeness, of happiness revolving around you know, a stable monogamous heterosexual relationship and oftentimes marriage. But in Mulan it's kind of suggested with do you want to stay forever, even though you don't actually see like Mulan getting married or something. We see this amplified in a film like Misrepresentation, where we see profiles of women in the media who have to deal with all sort of sexist behavior and sexist attitudes, and how we in our media landscape in America continue to cycle and recycle these common stories that cut across gender lines. So taking this idea or these ideas with us into this week's class, here's what we want to do today, Monday, and Wednesday. So let's get into the calendar. For Monday's class, you want to read John McWhorter's piece in The Atlantic from a few years ago, "The Virtue Signalers Won't Change the World." Now, this is a controversial piece. I just want to throw this out there. As you're reading, if you're kind of scratching your head like, wait a second, what is this guy really talking about? That's okay. It's designed to provoke debate and conversation. So you want to identify 3 noteworthy moments, and you want to post your thoughts about them to the Google Doc. And as I mentioned in our Zoom chat recently, if you want to connect some of those noteworthy moments to recent protests in Michigan and elsewhere in the country surrounding the quarantine order, or people trying to turn this into a states' rights issue or Confederate flag, I don't know, people have Confederate flags, or turning it into a Second Amendment issue or something like that, all of that is fair game here. So you're going to read John McWhorter's piece, find 3 noteworthy moments, and post your responses to the Google Doc. Now for Wednesday's class, the only required work that you're going to be asked to complete is really just to continue the revision process of your Unit 3 essay. We mentioned this earlier that one of the most important elements of passing the class is to complete your Unit 3 essay. And by passing the class, I mean passing it through from Syracuse's perspective, right? So you're earning 2 grades here, the Berkeley High School grade, the Syracuse grade. And you're sort of beholden to 2 different sets of rules, which is kind of frustrating. But to pass the class for Syracuse, you've got to complete the Unit 3 essay and you've got to complete the final project. More on that later. But your Unit 3 essay is going to be due by Friday night to turnitin.com. Wednesday's class, you're just going to peer edit. So we talked about this last week, but we're going to have a Zoom meeting on Wednesday at 1 p.m. And that's going to be an opportunity for people to talk about their own drafts. You're also welcome, as you're drafting, to look at some of the sample essays posted online. There are 2 examples. Sample 1 is the really strong one. Sample 2 is the one that's kind of almost there, but it reads more like an early draft instead of a final draft. And I think that those are also really important to check out. So again, Monday, you're going to read the John McWhorter piece. For Wednesday, you're peer editing. We're going to have a Zoom meeting, and we're going to talk about some editing concerns that you may have. And then you have some examples that are posted to the website, so definitely check those out. Apparently my son is crying right now, so I don't know. Okay, so before I take off and check that out, this is really loud. The last thing that I want to remind you of is that if you have a draft that you would like to share with everybody else before we meet the Zoom meeting, please feel free to share a link in the group chat to your Google Doc so that we all get a chance to read through your work before we Zoom. And that way we can talk about the specifics instead of having to spend our time in the Zoom meeting like actually reading through your work. So, John McWhorter for Monday, peer edit for Wednesday. We're going to have a Zoom meeting on Wednesday at 1 p.m. so that we can talk about the revision process, and that's going to be it. Next week is such an exciting week. It is like my favorite content of all year. So I'm really looking forward to what's coming up in the future. I know that it's probably a struggle for us to maintain focus and to get started on a lot of this work because we've got a lot of other concerns in our lives right now. So I acknowledge that, and I invite you to overcome those obstacles and continue on this journey that we've been on for a really long time already. So thank you again for your attention. Thanks for your time. Until we see each other again, be good to yourself, be good to everybody else, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.